So for our next video, we're going to be getting into the organ system level of organization, going over the 11 major body systems we find in the human body, the 11 major organ systems we find in the human body, and just kind of do a brief overview. Again, this first chapter is pretty simple, so it won't take forever. So you may notice we're kind of going a little slow, but we can afford to, so we're going to. So if we look at the integumentary system, and just before I forget to, this should generally be review, but if it is not, right, if you don't remember this, you really need to commit these things to memory. This is going to be a very baseline side of physiology. We're going to get a lot deeper than this, but if this is something that you're like, whoa, I don't remember this, please jumpstart that review. Right? The OpenStax textbook that we are allowing you guys to use, that I recommend that you use, it does have some anatomy review for you as well, so if you forget those things, you can use the textbook to kind of do all in one. Alright, let's go ahead and get to our body systems. Back on track. We look at the integumentary system first. The main function of the integumentary system is to protect the body. What we're really thinking of is generally the skin and all the things that go along with skin. So different glands, fingernails, toenails, hair, right? All those things that go with skin. And since we are covering everything quite literally head to toe, we are protecting, right? We are protecting the body. We're protecting it against physical damage. We're protecting it against chemical damage. We're protecting it against pathogens. It's really an overall protective feature. But we're also going to be helping with regulating body temperature. So you think about getting goosebumps, you think about shivering. Well, the shivering would be the muscle, but the goosebumps you get when you shiver. If you think about the sweat that you produce when it's very hot, which is probably more pertinent at the time of recording since it is August. It does help with some waste removal and making vitamin D. It also is going to be one of the major components for us to be able to detect information from the world around us. So sensations like touch, pain, temperature, so warm versus cold, those are going to be sensations that we are able to detect. We're able to determine the temperature of something. We're able to tell if something is soft or rough, if something is pushing on us slightly or very deeply. We feel pain if there's damage that's occurring. And then lastly, we do also have that hypodermis for the storage of fat, which provides insulation as well. We move to the skeletal system. This is where we're looking at the bones and the joints, as well as the cartilages that go with those bones and joints. And their whole job is to support and protect the body as well. So support, we are providing a framework for the body, right? A scaffolding that we can build off of because it is hard, because it's this solid structure that is very sturdy, right? It's not flimsy, you're not flopping around. It gives us a strong framework. Think of like if you were building a house, you would have to build a frame and then you can put up the walls, right? Then you can put up the drywall and the electrical and all that kind of stuff, right? But if you don't have a framework, your house is going to be extremely flimsy. So we get support, we get a framework, we get protection for certain organs. Think about your skull protecting your brain, as for example. We also will provide the surfaces for the muscles to attach so that we can conduct movement. Muscles have to pull on something, and if they contract and there's nothing attached, their contraction leads to no real functional movement. As long as the muscle's attached to the bone, when it contracts, it will pull, right? Like a pulley system, it will pull on that body part. We also are going to be using the skeletal system for the production of blood cells, as well as storage of minerals and fat. So storing things like in the yellow bone marrow, and then using like the red bone marrow to produce all the different blood cells that we use right in our bloodstream. We get to the endocrine system. The endocrine system is one of our communication and control systems. It is the slower system of the two in that we're producing hormones, and hormones are a little bit of a slower response system. or a slower messaging system, so to speak. So all the various glands like the pineal gland, the hypothalamus, pituitary, thymus, thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal, pancreas, ovaries, and testes, right, as well as a few others that can produce hormones even though it's not their primary function, like the heart. These are all going to be producing hormones that will help communicate and control other body parts, right? That's the whole thing there. And then our second of the two communication and control body systems is the nervous system. And this one's really kind of the big boss and is the immediate response, the immediate communication system. The communication that occurs, the signal sending that occurs in the nervous system is rapid, right? Really, really fast in comparison to the endocrine system. The main components we're looking at are the brain and spinal cord and nerves. We have special sense organs, so think like your ears, your eyes, right? And the whole purpose is to use what are called action potentials or nerve impulses to communicate and control other body parts, regulate things that are happening, both internally and externally. We also will take information in, so sensory information about the world around us, take that information in, make sense of that information so we can pull information from different parts of the body in to create a complete picture. So maybe we're pulling visual information in from the eyes, audio information from the ears, we're pulling in information maybe from our skin, right? All different things, and then we pull it together to create the full picture and then make a decision on a response and then send that signal for that response out. So sending it to muscles, sending it to glands, whatever organ is involved in the response that we've kind of articulated. We then get into the muscular system or the muscle system. This we're looking at pretty much the skeletal muscle only. There are other types of muscles that we are not worried about with this system, but this is all movement, right? This is to help us move body parts in conjunction with the bones, right? We're going to connect our muscles, attaching them to bones, right, so that we have something to anchor to pull on. We then have the cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system is going to have the blood, the heart, the blood vessels, right? And the whole thing is to kind of serve as like the main highway system of the body, to move things like oxygen and nutrients around to get to the tissues that they need to get to, as well as to move waste away from tissues. So the carbon dioxide that's produced, waste products like urea can be pulled away into the bloodstream, circulated around so that they can get to their exit point, so they can leave. It also does serve a little bit as our defense as well, because within that blood we have the white blood cells, which have various ways of protecting us against disease, protecting us against pathogens who can make us ill. We get to the respiratory system. The respiratory system is mainly composing of the lungs and all of the parts that serve as the air passageways, like the pharynx, the larynx, trachea, and the bronchial tubes. But the big thing is to bring oxygen in, get oxygen out. Right, so that way we can get the oxygen in that we need for cellular respiration, that all of our cells need, right? All of our cells need this oxygen to produce their ATP, and they're producing carbon dioxide as a byproduct. So we want to bring oxygen in to benefit all of our cells in their ability to make ATP, as well as get rid of the carbon dioxide that they're producing, because that carbon dioxide, when it builds up, is very problematic. This bringing in of oxygen and getting rid of carbon dioxide does help us regulate the pH of the body to some degree. Although the kidneys, quite honestly, take a bigger chunk of that particular function. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the nitty-gritty later throughout the semester. We get to the digestive system. The digestive system is mainly just to bring in important nutrient components. So we have all the GI tract organs, basically all the organs that come in contact with the food you eat, like the mouth, the esophagus, the intestines, anus, right? We do also have accessory organs that do not directly contact the food we eat, but do help with the digestive process. So, like the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas, those guys can help out with us breaking food down within the GI tract. Right, and so again, the whole point is to bring in the important nutrients that we need to do um, all the different activities that our cells engage in on a day-to-day basis, and also to get rid of the solid waste that we don't need. So anything that's not useful, anything that we can't digest or absorb, the digestive system will also eliminate that so we don't get a buildup of things that are unusable. The urinary system, this is the kidneys, ureters, bladder, and urethra. This is going to be for the production of urine, storing that urine, and then getting rid of that urine, right? It's kind of straightforward in that aspect, but by doing this, right, the production and elimination of urine and all that, doing this is also going to help us regulate things like our blood volume, the pH of the blood, whether or not we have more solutes in it, so the mineral balance, the water balance, as well as how many red blood cells we have. So especially we're talking about the urinary system, we're really mainly talking about the workhorse, which is the kidneys. But they do all these other things. So in that process of making urine, we have all these other things that we're doing on top of that, right, that come from that urine production process. And then we get to the reproductive systems. This will vary between male and female. Now it's important to note in this class, we will be talking about the typical presentation of male and female anatomy and physiology. We are not going to necessarily go too crazy. We will talk about it a bit because it is interesting. But for the most part, we're going to be focused on the typical presentation of male and female physiology. But do recognize from the get-go that there is a spectrum of individuals who may be intersex, and that intersex can fall anywhere between typical male and female presentations. There are lots of different ways that can develop. It can be because of chromosomal differences, it can be because of genetic abnormalities, genetic differences, a whole laundry list of things that can go on. So just keep in mind, we will be talking about the typical male and female presentations. We will also talk a little bit about some of the ways that it's not so clean cut, it's not so typical as well. But just keep that in mind for right now. We're not going to obviously get into those details at this moment, but keep in the back of your head, we're going to get into that later. So if we're looking at this, the typical female presentation of the reproductive system, we have the gonads, in this case are the ovaries. We have the fallopian tubes, the uterus, vagina. Those are all going to be kind of the main components of the reproductive system on the female side, as well as secondary sex organs like the mammary glands and breast tissue. On the male side, we are seeing things like the testes, the seminal vesicles, the vas deferens, the prostate, the bulbourethral glands, right, epididymis, and the penis. So lots of different components on there too. But the whole point with both of these is for reproduction, right? Producing these highly specialized cells that are basically only have one job, and that's to become a new individual, right? Join with another gamete so that we can form a new person. Then we get to the immune system. Sometimes you can see this like called the lymphatic system as well. So we have lymphatic fluid, we have lymphatic vessels, we have the lymphatic organs like the spleen, thymus, lymph nodes, tonsils are all going to be helping out with this. We're going to be talking a bit about the immune responses in this particular class that we really didn't talk about in anatomy, simply because it really kind of is physio heavy rather than anatomy heavy. But the whole point is to take things like proteins and fluid that have seeped into the tissues, put it back in the bloodstream. It's also going to help us with absorbing the lipids from the foods we eat when we're in the small intestine. We're also going to help with the maturation process of specific immune cells like B and T cells that will protect us against pathogens, right? Those are going to be part of our acquired immune response, right? Basically, when your body learns how to fight pathogens, specific pathogens, as well as cancer.